This video demo will show you how to create and manage transactions within Reesio. To get started creating transactions, you need to click on the blue Create Transaction button that's in the upper right corner. Now, this blue Create Transaction button will only show up when you're within the transaction management portion of Reesio's product. For example, right now I'm on the dashboard section of Reesio's transaction management product. Let's say I'm in the CRM product, like in the contact section. If I go to the contact section, you're going to see that the Create Transaction button is no longer there, and I now see a Create Lead button. So the main kind of button or call to action that you would want in the upper right corner is pertains and is specific to which part of Reesio's product that you're in. Okay, so now if I go back to the transaction management portion of our product, which can be any of these 6 modules, I will now see the Create Transaction button again in the upper right corner. So to begin creating transactions, simply click on that blue Create Transaction button. And the first thing that Reesio will do is prompt you to decide or choose whether it's a listing transaction or a buying side transaction. Now this is important because Reesio will ask for different pieces of information from you based on whether it's a listing transaction or a buying side transaction. In addition, Reesio creates single property page websites for listing transactions only that you can then use to market your listing transactions. So you got to make sure that you definitely choose the right type of transaction that you are creating in this first screen. In this example, I'm going to say that I'm creating a listing transaction. Next, Reesio will prompt you for other information or additional information to enter in to create your transaction and then begin managing your transaction within our transaction dashboard. So the first thing to do is to choose the status of the transaction. So Reesio has come up with all the common status types that most of the states use in the United States for managing the status of your transaction. Now, we understand that there might be some different variations of the statuses by state or by locale, and that's why we have this optional status tag over here. So if you want to enter in essentially more details or a tag to be more specific on the status of your transaction, you can enter that in here. And if you enter this in here, then the status of your transaction in this case will read active / whatever I have here. This box is completely optional, though. You do not have to add a status tag. Many people don't, but it's a nice little kind of extra piece of information regarding the status of your transaction if you want to enter this in. The next thing you do is choose the sale type. So is it a resale, a short sale, foreclosure, etc. This example, I'm going to say it's a resale. And then I'm going to go ahead and enter in the listing price. So I'm going to say it's $900,000. And the listed for sale date is today, January 26, 2015. The expiration date is 6 months from now. So this is generally the expiration date of your listing agreement with the seller. And then the next thing I do is over here on the right-hand side is I enter in the property details. So the reason why we ask for all this information, well, it's twofold. One is just to help you understand and have all the property details for your property in one place. The other reason is for the single property page website that we create automatically for your listing transactions. So again, those are marketing pages that are used to market your property. And you can watch the training videos and read the support articles on how a single property page works if you want more information on that feature. But for right now, let's continue on with entering in the property details. So I'm going to choose the property type, so single family. Then I'm going to go ahead and enter in the square footage, the beds, the baths, the property address, and click continue. And then the final step is, so Reesio automatically pulls in the Google Maps photo of whatever property address you enter in. So this does happen to be 123 Main Street in San Francisco. It's an ugly building. But nonetheless, the reason why we do that is, again, for the single property page websites. But don't worry, you don't have to keep this picture, especially if it's a picture that doesn't look too appealing. You have the ability, once the transaction's been created, to add as many beautiful photos to your transaction and to your single property page website as you want. Same thing for the property description. You can enter in a full property description right in here if you want. However, you can edit and add this information later if you so choose. But we're at least displaying this for you so you can at least see what the photo and description are going to look like if you were to not upload your own photos or enter in your own description. I'm then going to go ahead and click the orange Create Transaction button, and our system will then generate the transaction details and take me to the real estate transaction dashboard for this particular transaction. Once it generates a transaction, the first thing it prompts me to do is to invite transaction members. So this is a really critical and important step, and the reason why Reesio prompts you for this as the first thing upon creating a transaction is because the magic of Reesio really happens when you bring all parties of a real estate transaction into the transaction dashboard to collaborate. So yes, you could use our product just for yourself if you want, or just for you and your broker, or you and your agents. However, again, the magic of our product really happens when you can collaborate with your clients, with the agents from the other side of the transaction, with third parties, and so forth. So that's why we make this front and center, to encourage you to invite transaction members into the transaction so you can collaborate with them after doing so. Now, one of the reasons that sometimes people say, well, I don't want to invite someone into a transaction is because they're hesitant that it will be a long, arduous process for that person to join Reesio, create an account, and join the transaction. And the reality is that simply not true. We make Reesio super, super simple, drop dead simple, for anybody to join a transaction. In fact, we talk about that up here. And if you click on this link here, it actually will take you to a support article within Reesio that will show you what is the joining process like for people that you invite into transactions. And as you will see from this support article, literally the person that you invite into a transaction will get an email with a link that they click on, they enter in a password, they click submit, and that's it. They're in the transaction. No long sign-up process, no long joining process, or anything like that. And because you can control exactly what transaction members see regarding tasks and documents and everything else, it absolutely behooves you to invite everyone into the transaction. Because if you want to collaborate and share something with them, and you want to have a record and a record-keeping log of everything that takes place, you'll need to have them in the transaction. Same thing if you want to e-sign documents with them, or e-share documents, assign tasks to them, and so forth, you'll need them in the transaction. So to invite a transaction member, it's really, really simple. You just choose the role type. In this case, I'm going to click Seller. I'm going to invite my client in. I'm going to click Next. And then I type in the name and email, or I can search my contacts from the CRM system and automatically add somebody that way. So in this case, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to invite Win into this transaction. By the way, if it's a new contact that you're adding, you can simultaneously add them to your contacts and address book by checking this box over here. In this case, this user is already part of my address and contacts book, so I don't need to do that. And then I click Submit. And if the user that you're adding to a transaction is a brand new user, then that person, again, will receive an email to join the transaction. If, however, that user already has a Reesio account, then they will simply receive an email confirmation letting them know that they've been added to the transaction. And they can click on the link in the email and be taken to the transaction. But they don't need to keep, of course, recreating an account over and over again. Once someone already has a Reesio account, they'll just receive a notification that they've been added. Whereas if they don't have a Reesio account, they'll be prompted to create one with the support article information I showed you before, just an email, link, click on that, and password. Once I add somebody to a transaction, Reesio will take you into the members section of the transaction dashboard automatically and show you the members that are in the transaction. You have the ability to separate out transaction members into different groups so that they can see or not see each other based upon what you prefer. We have separate support videos that talk about transaction member groups, so I'm not going to dive into that into great detail. But suffice to say that you can definitely separate people out so that they can or cannot see each other. That's particularly useful, for example, if you're a listing agent and you're bringing in multiple buyer's agents to be able to e-share and e-sign documents such as disclosures, and you don't want them to be able to see each other. But again, please watch the training video on transaction member groups for all the details on how transaction member groups work. Once somebody has been invited in the transaction, even if they haven't already created a Reesio account, I actually can begin e-sharing and e-signing documents with them, assigning tasks to them, and so forth. In other words, Reesio does not prevent you from interacting with that transaction member within Reesio before they've created an account. And what will happen is, if they haven't created an account yet, and let's say you've shared 10 documents with them, then when they do finally create an account, those documents will be waiting for them within the documents section, or those tasks will be waiting for them in the workflow section, and so forth. So just know that you don't have to wait for you to continue doing your job, or you're not blocked from doing your job and sharing things with those transaction members or interacting with them while you wait for them to create an account. You can already begin to interact with them even before they create a Reesio account. Okay? So some other things that I want to show you in terms of managing transactions at a high level are some other things over here on the right-hand side. So you can change the status of a transaction at any point in time by clicking on the status over here and then changing the status or adding a tag over here if you want. You can view the property details at any time by clicking on this transaction summary button over here. And a little window will open up with the transaction details, and I can edit those if I want. I can also edit the transaction details up here in this Details tab. If I click on that, it'll take me to the transaction details where I can update and edit this information at any point in time. Okay? Some other things I can do to manage the transaction up here is I can change my transaction settings for whether, for example, I want the single property page website to show or not, and whether I want my listing transactions to be syndicated to Trulia or Homes.com or not. So you can change these per transaction. You can also change them at the highest level for all of your transactions by default by clicking up here and then clicking on the Marketing tab as well. Okay? You can also archive a transaction here as well by clicking on the Archive tray. And I'm going to show you in a little bit what archiving a transaction will do. I can also change or go to my single property page website for any transactions I've created by clicking on this. If I click on this, it will take me to my single property page website, which again we generate for all listing transactions. And then I can share this with buyers and buyers agents. I can get them to make offers on the property. I can share it via social media and so forth. Again, we have other support videos that go into detail on those features specifically. Okay? And there's a myriad of other things that I can do within each transaction. I can manage workflow tasks. I can see activity logs. I can manage documents, receive offers, manage all my photos, keep track of notes, send messages, and so forth. Again, we have support videos that go into all of these features in depth, and we encourage you to watch those training videos to get up to speed on how to manage all those features. The other thing and final thing that I want to show you as part of this video is how to manage all of your transactions in one lump sum. So this is a transaction dashboard of an individual transaction. But what if I want to manage all my transactions, or if I want to view all my transactions? I can easily do that by coming up here to the navigation tray and clicking on Transactions, or coming over here to the left-hand side and clicking Transactions. So when I click on Transactions and it takes me to the Transactions page, this is how I can manage all my transactions in bulk. So for example, I can archive multiple transactions at once just by clicking on the tray, the archive tray, and archiving the transactions. If I want to dive into a transaction, I can just click on the thumbnail of the photo and it will take me into the transaction dashboard, which is just where I was. So if I clicked on this, it would take me to the transaction I created. Again, I can change the status of a property just by clicking on the status right there. We also offer a different alternative view. So this is a nice thumbnail view and is very practical if you don't have too many transactions. But if you have a long list of transactions, you might want to instead use this list view that we offer, and you can get to that by clicking on this list view over here. And this will list out all my transactions. And then I can do things like sort by status. I can sort by different criteria over here. I can also search by different criteria. So if I want to find all my properties for 432 Mission, I can do that. I can then delete that and clear the search results and come back and see everything. We also have advanced filters over here on the right-hand side. So this means you can filter by any type of criteria that you want and quickly get to a specific property. And again, if you have a lot of transactions, this is a great way to be able to get to certain transactions with just a couple clicks of a button and some different criteria that you set. So you can look at all the transactions by status or by sale type or by closing date or whatnot. This archived one is actually really important. So remember I showed you how to archive transactions before? Well, right now, all I see are my open transactions, okay? If I archive transactions, then that will remove it from my main view. So for example, if I show this thumbnail view again, and if I archive this transaction I just created, it now disappears from my main view. And it's archived. It's no longer open. If I want to access any previously archived transactions, I come here to the filter, I choose Archived, unchoose Open, click Apply, and now it's going to bring up all of my archived transactions ever since the beginning of time. And I could narrow it down even further and say archived with a closing date of whatever. You can have multiple different criteria that you filter by. Okay, now if I want to save this filter, which means if I leave this page and come back and I want this filter to be saved, I need to click Save Filter and Apply. And now, if I leave, let's say I go to my dashboard, and I come back to my transactions, that filter that I had of all archived transactions is still visible, right? So I'm seeing all of my archived transactions. Now, sometimes people will forget that they have a filter on of their archived transactions, and they'll be like, well, where's my property? Where's my open transactions? Well, it's because you saved the filter of all your archived transactions. So instead, what you need to do is uncheck archived, recheck open, save filter and apply, and now here you go. Here are your open transactions again. So that's how you create and manage transactions, and we definitely encourage you to watch the other training videos on how to do specific things within each transaction once you've created those transactions.